911. What's your emergency? There's blood everywhere, he's not breathing, please, my kids saw everything. She just needed help fixing her car. That's all. But within minutes, her ex-boyfriend was bleeding out on the pavement. Her children were screaming. And the man she once trusted was standing over the body, holding a gun. Shot in front of his kids. Jealousy, lies, and the fatal ending of Antonio Gomez. Was it self-defense, or a jealous ambush? Did Eduardo Castaneda go there to help, or to kill? And what did the children really see? Let's rewind. Antonio Gomez was known as a devoted father of three. Always at school events. Always showing up, especially for his daughter's soccer games. He and his ex, Claudia, had their issues. But one thing was constant, the kids came first. Claudia moved on. Began dating Eduardo Castaneda, a man known for being quiet, intense, and very protective. Maybe too protective. Eduardo wasn't thrilled about Antonio still being in the picture. Especially when Claudia's car broke down, and she called Antonio, not him. According to court filings, Eduardo left work abruptly that day. Angry. He texted Claudia. No response. Then, without warning, he drove straight to her apartment complex. He claimed he was checking in on her. But police say, he showed up with a loaded weapon. Suspicion intensifies. Witnesses say Antonio had just arrived, his kids in the back seat, when Eduardo pulled in. Words were exchanged. Voices raised. Then, 3 gunshots. Antonio collapsed near the curb. Claudia was screaming, blood on her arm. The children, ages 5, 8, and 11, watched everything. Eduardo told officers he acted in self-defense. Said Antonio got aggressive. That he felt threatened. But here's where the story unravels. Claudia, despite being wounded, told investigators. Eduardo came out of nowhere. Antonio didn't even raise a hand. Then, the kids were interviewed. Daddy was talking to mommy. Then Eduardo pulled out something shiny. He got mad really fast. Claudia was shot in the arm. Accidentally? Or was she caught in the middle? Even more chilling, Eduardo fled the scene. Psychologists say trauma can distort memory. But in this case, the kids' stories were strikingly consistent. They described Eduardo shouting, pulling the gun, shooting before Antonio even moved forward. One child said, he didn't even let daddy talk. Their words carried weight, and crushed Eduardo's self-defense claim. He wasn't standing his ground. He was spiraling. And Antonio was trying to help his kid's mother. When police finally tracked Eduardo down 36 hours later, hiding at a friend's place, he said something strange. I thought she was playing both of us. Investigators unearthed texts. Messages showing Eduardo was jealous, suspicious. He'd even accused Claudia of sneaking around with Antonio. But there was no affair. Just 2 people co-parenting. And one man who couldn't handle it. Meanwhile, Antonio's community mourned. His GoFundMe page went viral. Photos of him holding his son, smiling beside his daughters. He lived for them, the bio read. Now they have to grow up without him. Eduardo Castaneda was charged with first-degree murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, endangering the welfare of a child. Prosecutors say he didn't snap. He planned it. He couldn't stand that Antonio was still part of Claudia's life. In court, Claudia wept as she testified. Not just for herself, but for the man her children lost. He was a good father. He didn't deserve to die like that. Not in front of our kids. But here's where the story turns again. Claudia's lawyers reveal something chilling. Eduardo had once tried to install a GPS tracker on her car. She never reported it. Thought she was imagining things. Now, prosecutors are digging deeper. Was this part of a pattern? Did Eduardo have violent tendencies? And what else did Claudia endure before that day? One father is dead. 3 children are traumatized. And a woman now faces a life haunted by what she didn't see coming, until it was far too late. 911 call reenactment. He shot him, right in front of the kids. My God, please, hurry. She just needed help fixing her car. Minutes later, her ex was bleeding out in front of their children. This is the story of Eduardo Castaneda and Antonio Gomez, 2 fathers. One dead. One facing life behind bars. But was this a case of self-defense, or the result of obsessive jealousy? And why did Eduardo flee the scene, if he was just trying to protect his family? Let's dig in. Antonio Gomez was a father of 3. A mechanic by day, devoted dad by night. His relationship with his ex, Andrea, had its ups and downs. But he never stopped showing up for his kids. Andrea had moved on. And so had Antonio. But Eduardo Castaneda? He was Andrea's new boyfriend. Quiet. Calculated. Jealous. And on the night of June 15th, something snapped. At 7:14 p.m., Andrea called Antonio. Her car had broken down near their apartment. Antonio showed up with jumper cables. No argument. Just help. What he didn't know. Eduardo had been trying to reach Andrea all day. And she wasn't picking up. When he finally did get through, she told him, Antonio's here. He's helping. Minutes later, Eduardo pulled up. Angry. Silent. Within seconds, Antonio was on the ground, bleeding out. Shot multiple times. But that wasn't all. Andrea was hit too. A bullet to the leg. And the kids? They saw everything. Eduardo told police he acted in self-defense. That Antonio came at him. But eyewitnesses, including Andrea, say otherwise. Court documents reveal Antonio had no weapon. No signs of aggression. Just a toolbox and a father trying to help. And remember, Andrea was shot too. Accidentally, Eduardo claims. But if you were truly defending yourself, why would you open fire with kids inches away? Police say Eduardo Castaneda fled the scene in his work van. He was captured 4 hours later, hiding at a friend's house. If you were defending yourself, why run? His attorney said it was fear. Panic. Adrenaline. But prosecutors say it's guilt. Inconsistencies stacked up fast. Eduardo told officers Antonio lunged. But neighbors saw no signs of a struggle. He said Andrea was between them. But ballistics show she was shot from a distance. And then came the most damning detail of all. Antonio's 9-year-old son told police. Daddy didn't do anything. He just said hi. Then the man started yelling. Then bang, bang, bang. The youngest clutched his sister's hand in court. Witnessing their father's death wasn't just traumatic. It may be the key to unraveling Eduardo's entire defense. In moments of chaos, children remember what adults tried to justify. And they remembered everything. As the trial begins, public sentiment is divided. A GoFundMe for Antonio's family surpassed $40,000 in days. Comments flooded in, he lived for his kids. He didn't deserve this. Eduardo supporters argue mental health, stress, misunderstanding. But the facts? They paint a picture of a man driven by rage, not fear. In court, Eduardo wept as Antonio's children took the stand. But behind that emotion, was there remorse? Or regret that he got caught? We dug deeper into Eduardo's text messages, his search history, his past, and what we found could change everything you thought you knew about this case. At first glance, it looked like a tragic act of self-defense. A man comes home. A fight breaks out. Shots are fired. But as we started digging deeper, one detail at a time, everything began to unravel. This is the story of Eduardo Castaneda, the man who said he was protecting his family, but ended up killing the mother of his ex. And it's what he did next that made police, and the internet, question everything. It was just after 6 p.m. when 911 calls lit up. Antonio Bustillos had just dropped off his 10-year-old son at his ex-wife's house. Her new husband, Eduardo Castaneda, wasn't supposed to be there. But he was. And within minutes, Antonio would be dead. Shot in the back. In the driveway. In front of his son. Castaneda claimed it was self-defense. Castaneda's statement, he reached into his pocket. I thought he had a weapon. I was scared for my life. But here's the thing. Antonio was unarmed. Let's pause and assess. He was dropping off his son. He'd done it countless times before. But this time, Castaneda was there. Unexpectedly. And something was boiling. Antonio was a loving father. All he wanted was to be part of his son's life. So what changed? Witnesses said Antonio was calm. But Castaneda? He was agitated. Nervous. Paranoid. Testimony from neighbor, we heard yelling. Then shots. We came out and saw Antonio on the ground. And then, this detail. Antonio was shot in the back. Not the chest. Not facing off. Running away. That's not self-defense. That's something else. And just when it seemed the facts were bad enough, we learned something else. Castaneda didn't just shoot Antonio. He shot his ex-wife. The victim's mother suffered a gunshot wound to the torso. She survived. Wait, Why would someone acting in self-defense turn the gun on a witness? Or was she trying to stop him? Her wound wasn't mentioned in the original call. And Castaneda didn't wait for police. He fled. Police issued a bolo, "Be on the lookout." Castaneda was gone. He didn't turn himself in for 2 days. That delay changed everything. Police said it looked less like panic, and more like guilt. He had time to clean up. Time to plan a story. Castaneda's version started to fall apart. He said he feared for his life. But there was no sign Antonio had a weapon. And Castaneda was the one waiting outside. And then there's this. The ex-wife's gunshot wound? Police later said it was consistent with a defensive injury. Like she was trying to stop him. That's when the motive shifted. Not jealousy. Not fear. But control. Multiple reports suggested Castaneda had grown hostile over Antonio's presence in their son's life. Court document excerpt. There were ongoing tensions about visitation, drop-offs, and boundaries. Castaneda didn't want Antonio around. And the night of the shooting? He showed up when he wasn't expected to. Armed. The prosecution believes this wasn't self-defense. It was premeditated. And Castaneda? He was charged with murder. But here's the twist. He pled not guilty. And his legal team says the ex-wife's testimony can't be trusted. She was wounded, traumatized, and possibly biased. So the trial? It's set to become a war of narratives. We'll dive into Castaneda's chilling police interview. And uncover what prosecutors say proves his intent. Before he ever pulled the trigger. In the hours after Antonio's arrest, something unexpected happened. The story began to unravel. Castaneda was charged with first-degree murder, aggravated battery, child abuse. But there was no plea, no court date, just silence, and a community scrambling to make sense of what happened. Antonio's family launched a GoFundMe. The title? Help Us Bury Mom. They described a loving mother, a kind soul, a peacemaker. Nothing like the person Castaneda claimed was coming at him with a knife. She wasn't violent, the eldest daughter wrote. He was the one with rage issues. He couldn't let her go. At first, this looked like just another custody dispute turned deadly. But what we found next made us question everything. Pause and assess. If someone truly acted in self-defense, why wouldn't they call 911 immediately? Why drive away? Why wait almost a day to turn yourself in? We traced Castaneda's route after the shooting. Round pushpin from his ex-wife's home to his brother's apartment across town. Round pushpin then to a motel outside the city. Round pushpin finally, to the police station, 22 hours later. He never checked on the children. Never even called to see if they were safe. What kind of father does that? We already knew about Celeste, the ex-wife. But there was someone else in that house that night. Her mother. When police entered the scene, they found her, too. Wounded. Barely conscious. Shot in the chest. Why? She wasn't part of the custody dispute. She didn't pose a threat. Yet Castaneda pulled the trigger on her too. I tried to stop him, she later told police from her hospital bed. He just kept firing. Suddenly, this wasn't about self-defense. This was about control. And when control slipped out of Castaneda's hands, he chose bullets over boundaries. Antonio's 3 children now live with relatives. They rarely speak of that night. But they remember everything. The blood. The screaming. Their mother collapsing in front of them. And yet, no trial has begun. No jury has heard their story. The system moves slow. Especially when the accused remains silent. But silence won't erase what happened. Will the children take the stand? What will they say? Will Castaneda try to plead mental illness? Will the GoFundMe help uncover more about Celeste's last days? And one question still lingers. Was it really about jealousy? Or something darker? This wasn't just a failed marriage. It was the slow rot of unresolved trauma. The illusion of peace. The assumption that time alone heals deep wounds. We often ask how co-parenting can work after love dies. But what happens when one parent refuses to let go? And how many red flags get ignored until it's too late? In the end, what started as a simple favor ended in fatal obsession, and a question that haunts every parent: what really keeps our kids safe?